chosen one. There is a pattern in your life that cannot be explained by ordinary language. It feels like something is gently, yet deliberately removing you from spaces that once felt familiar. Not violently, not chaotically, but with a quiet precision that almost feels intentional. There are moments when you pause and wonder why certain connections are fading, why certain environments no longer hold you the same way. It can feel like something is being taken from you. But if you look deeper, you begin to sense that nothing is being taken. Something is being revealed. What is unfolding in your life right now carries weight. Not the kind that burdens you, but the kind that reshapes you. It is subtle, yet undeniable. You may not fully understand it yet, but you can feel that something sacred is moving beneath the surface of your everyday experiences. There is a quiet force drawing you away from what once defined you. It is not rejection. It is not abandonment. It is separation with purpose. A kind of separation that clears away what no longer aligns so that something more truthful can emerge. You are not being pushed out. You are being lifted beyond what could no longer contain your growth. And that shift can feel confusing at first. Doors seem to close without explanation. People become distant without reason. The familiar begins to feel foreign. But behind every one of these moments, there is a deeper movement guiding you forward. Within you, there has always been a knowing, a quiet awareness that your life was meant to expand beyond what you've already seen. That knowing was never imagination. It was something placed within you long before you understood it. Now that inner voice is becoming clearer. Now your surroundings are rearranging themselves so that nothing blocks what you are meant to become. And yes, there are moments where this path feels isolating, where old connections fall away and you question what is happening. But this is not a sign of something going wrong. This is transformation. This is refinement. This is the moment where the version of you shaped by fear-past wounds and limitation begins to dissolve, so that the real you can finally rise. You are not being forgotten. You are being seen in a way that goes deeper than anything the world has ever reflected back to you. There is something powerful about being removed from what is familiar. It creates space. It clears noise. It allows you to hear what was always there, but could never fully reach you. And slowly, something begins to shift inside you. Your thoughts become clearer. Your heart begins to feel lighter. Your direction, though not fully visible, starts to feel certain. Because this process is not random. It is being guided with patience. Every change is intentional. Every step is part of a design you are only beginning to recognize. And what it is revealing is not something new. It is something that has always been within you, waiting for the moment when everything else fell away. You can feel it now. Queen of Pentacles is not asking you to chase identity anymore, but to sit firmly in it like a throne. You were always meant to occupy without needing permission. There is a grounding happening within you. A stability that does not depend on who stays or who leaves. A quiet strength that does not need to prove itself. You are becoming someone who no longer needs to be held in other people's perception to exist. And this is where the deeper truth begins. Because as you detach, something unusual starts to happen. Not just within you, but within them. The world doesn't close cycles loudly, and neither did the moment they began to lose their ability to truly recall you. It happens in fragments. At first, it is subtle. Someone tries to describe you and something feels incomplete. The details don't land the same. The emotional imprint they once held begins to blur like a face remembered through fog. And this is where the shift deepens. Because what they were holding on to was never fully you. It was a version shaped by proximity, by interaction, by the role you once played in their world. A reflection built from fragments, assumptions, and emotional exchanges. But now, that version is dissolving. like a wreath coming undone at the edges, like a cycle quietly completing itself. The energetic loop between you and them is closing. The threads that once tied your identity to their perception are loosening one by one. And slowly something begins to change. Their memory of you stops evolving. It becomes static, frozen in a version that no longer matches who you are becoming. And because you are no longer feeding that image with your presence, your reactions, your energy, it begins to weaken. This is not erasure. This is completion. A cycle that has fulfilled its purpose is now releasing its hold. You may feel this in strange ways. Someone who once understood you deeply now struggles to connect with who you are. Conversations feel misaligned. Their perception feels outdated, like they are speaking to a version of you that no longer exists. And from that silence, a truth begins to surface. They never truly held your essence, only your expression at a certain point in time. What you are stepping into now cannot be fully grasped by those who knew you before this transformation, because you are no longer operating within the same energetic pattern. You are no longer orbiting the same emotional space, and that creates a kind of distance that is not physical, but perceptual. It is as if the image they had of you is being gently erased, not out of rejection, but because it can no longer contain what you are becoming. And this is where it turns inward, because the more their memory of you fades, the more your awareness of yourself sharpens. Like a central figure standing calmly at the center of a completed circle, you begin to realize that your identity was never meant to be held in someone else's mind. It was meant to be embodied. And this is why detachment feels so powerful right now. You are no longer trying to maintain an image. You are no longer adjusting yourself to be remembered correctly. You are stepping out of the need to be perceived at all. And that creates something rare, a kind of freedom that most people never reach, because most remain tied to how they are seen. But you are moving beyond that. And as you do, the old reflections lose their clarity. Not because you disappeared, but because you completed the version of yourself they were holding on to. And right at that edge, where memory fades and identity stabilizes, you begin to understand something that changes everything. You were never meant to be remembered the way they tried to remember you. You were meant to become something they could no longer define. The hanged man doesn't force movement, and neither did this moment where everything in your life seemed to pause, suspend, and turn upside down. This is where it turns inward, because what you once called stagnation was never stillness. It was a sacred inversion, a deliberate pause where the old way of seeing yourself could no longer survive. You felt it, that strange suspension where progress didn't look like progress, where nothing external confirmed your growth, where your world seemed to hang in silence like breath held between two realities. And in that space, something subtle began to loosen. The identities you carried, the roles you performed, the ways you defined yourself through others' reactions, all of it started to slip. Not violently, but like leaves releasing from a branch when the season changes. And slowly something begins to change. You start seeing everything differently. The same memories, the same people, the same experiences, but from a completely altered perspective. As if you've been turned upside down just enough to realize the truth was never where you thought it was. What you didn't realize then is that this pause was protection. Because if you had continued forward with the same identity, you would have built a life that no longer matched who you are becoming. So everything stopped. Everything stretched. Everything held you in place long enough for a deeper awareness to emerge. And here is what most miss. During this suspension, others also begin to lose their grasp on you. Because while you are no longer reacting the same way, no longer feeding the same patterns, no longer confirming the version of you they recognized, their memory has nothing to anchor to. It begins to drift. It begins to distort. And eventually, it begins to fade. Not because they chose to forget, but because the version of you they held is no longer alive. And from that silence, a new tension arises. Part of you may want to explain yourself, to correct their misunderstanding, to reintroduce who you are becoming. But this is the test, because the moment you try to be understood through the old lens, you step back into the suspended version of yourself that this phase is trying to release. So you remain still, not passive, but surrendered. Like a figure suspended between earth and sky, you begin to understand that clarity doesn't come from movement right now. It comes from seeing, from allowing, from letting the old identity dissolve without interference. And as this continues, something profound begins to take shape. Your worth detaches from recognition. Your identity detaches from validation. Your presence detaches from being mirrored back to you. And what remains is something far more stable. A self that exists even when unseen. A self that does not collapse when misunderstood. A self that does not chase definition. This is not weakness. This is transformation through surrender. Because right at the point where you stop trying to hold on to how you are perceived, you gain something most never reach. Freedom from needing to be remembered correctly. And in that freedom, your true identity finally has space to breathe. The King of Wands doesn't wait for recognition, and neither does the version of you that is beginning to stand up from this silence. This is where the shift becomes visible. Not to them, but to you. Because what was once confusion is now turning into direction. What once felt like loss is now revealing itself as power. And slowly, something begins to change. You are no longer looking outward to confirm who you are. You are no longer scanning faces' reactions or memories to stabilize your identity. Instead, there is a steady flame building within you. Quiet, contained, but undeniable. It does not flicker when others misunderstand you. It does not dim when others forget you. It simply burns because it exists. And that is where your authority is born. Not from control, not from dominance, but from alignment. You begin to carry yourself differently. Not in a way that demands attention, but in a way that no longer seeks it. Like a figure seated firmly holding a staff not to prove power, but because power has already been claimed internally. And here is what most miss. When you stop feeding people your presence, your explanation, your emotional reactions, they lose access to the version of you they once interacted with. But when you simultaneously step into this quiet authority, something else happens. They feel it, even if they cannot name it, even if they cannot recall you clearly. There is a strange awareness that remains, like heat without a visible flame, like sunlight remembered without seeing the sky. Because while their memory of your image fades, your essence becomes stronger. And from that silence, a paradox begins to form. The less you try to be seen, the more your presence carries weight. The less you explain yourself, the more your existence feels defined. The less you reach outward, the more your energy stands inward, stable-rooted, unshaken. This is not performance. This is embodiment. And embodiment does not need witnesses to be real. There may still be moments where part of you wants to return to old patterns, to clarify who you are, to make sure you are understood, to correct how you are remembered. But this is where your new strength is tested, because the moment you step back into that need, the flame begins to depend on oxygen from outside. And that is not where you are meant to live anymore. You are learning to have to hold your own center, to trust your own direction, to move without needing validation as confirmation. And this creates something rare, a kind of leadership that does not announce itself, a kind of presence that does not ask for space, but naturally occupies it, like a crowned figure sitting beneath golden light, surrounded by symbols of life growth and quiet command. You begin to realize that your role was never to be remembered by others. It was to become undeniable to yourself. And as this continues, the distance between who you were and who you are becoming becomes impossible to ignore. Not for them, for you. And right at that point, where inner fire replaces external reflection, you step into something irreversible. You stop asking, "Do they see me?" And you begin to live as someone who finally sees themselves. The lovers reversed doesn't break connection loudly, and neither did the quiet fracture that formed when you stopped choosing who you used to be. Because this is where the truth becomes unavoidable. What you shared with them was never just about connection. It was about alignment. And once your alignment shifted, the bond could no longer hold in the same way. At first, it feels subtle, like a conversation that no longer flows, like a presence that no longer fits, like standing across from someone and realizing something invisible has changed. And that is where the deeper tension begins. Because part of you still remembers what it felt like when things were aligned, when the connection made sense, when you didn't have to question whether you belonged in that space. But here is what most miss. That version of connection was built on who you were before this transformation, before the silence, before the detachment, before the identity you are now stepping into began to take shape. And slowly, something begins to change. You realize that staying connected to people who only recognize your past self requires you to shrink, to simplify yourself, to fit back into a version of you that no longer feels true. And that creates a quiet conflict within you. Do you remain connected, or do you remain aligned? Because you cannot fully do both anymore. And from that realization, a separation begins to deepen. Not always physically, but emotionally, energetically, internally. It is like two reflections once facing each other, now turning slightly out of sync, still visible, still familiar, but no longer mirroring the same truth. And this is where it turns inward again. Because the choice is no longer about them. It is about you, about whether you will honor the version of yourself that is emerging, even if it means letting go of being understood by those who only knew your past. And that is not an easy crossing. There may be moments where you question yourself, where you wonder if you are being distant, or if you are simply becoming, where you feel the pull to reconnect, not because it is right, but because it is familiar. But the deeper truth is this: you are not disconnecting out of rejection. You are disconnecting out of truth. Because alignment does not force itself to remain where it no longer exists. It gently releases, like branches no longer holding the same fruit, like two paths that once ran together, now diverging without conflict, without noise, without explanation. And from that quiet divergence, something sacred begins to form. Your ability to choose yourself without needing agreement. Your ability to stand in your truth without needing reflection. Your ability to exist without needing to be mirrored back. This is not loneliness. This is sovereignty. And as this continues, something profound happens to how others hold you in their awareness. They may remember pieces, moments, fragments of who you were, but they can no longer fully access you. Because access requires alignment, and alignment has shifted. And right there, in that quiet, almost invisible separation, you step into something most never fully claim: the power to choose yourself, even when it changes everything around you. The Page of Pentacles doesn't rush into mastery, and neither does this new version of you that is just beginning to take root in unfamiliar ground. Because after the separation, after the fading, after the silence, there is a beginning, a small one, almost easy to overlook. But here is what most miss. This phase is not about becoming powerful in the way the world defines it. It is about becoming real in a way you have never allowed yourself to be before. And slowly, something begins to change. You start to relate to yourself differently, not as a fixed identity, not as a role to perform, but as something growing, something learning, something unfolding in real time. Like hands gently holding something valuable for the first time, you begin to approach your life with a new kind of attention. Not rushed, not pressured, but intentional. And this is where it turns inward again, because the space left behind by others is not emptiness. It is soil, and what you plant there now matters. You may notice a quiet curiosity returning, a desire to explore things without needing to prove anything, a willingness to try to learn to begin again without the weight of being watched or judged. This is new, because before, much of what you did was influenced by how it would be perceived. But now, there is no audience. And in that absence, there is freedom. Freedom to grow slowly. Freedom to make mistakes without it defining you. Freedom to discover who you are without needing it to be validated. And from that freedom, something begins to stabilize. Your attention becomes more focused. Your energy becomes more grounded. Your actions begin to align not with expectation, but with intention. Like a figure kneeling close to the earth, studying something simple yet meaningful, you begin to realize that your life is not about proving your worth anymore. It is about building it from within. And this creates a different kind of momentum. Not loud, not dramatic, but steady, consistent, real. There may still be moments where you look back, where you wonder if you are doing enough, becoming enough, moving fast enough. But the deeper truth is this: you are finally moving in a way that is yours, not influenced by pressure, not shaped by comparison, but guided by something internal that feels true. And as this continues, something subtle but powerful begins to take hold. You stop trying to reclaim how others see you, and you start investing in how you see yourself. Your focus shifts, your energy anchors, your direction becomes clearer, not because everything is figured out, but because you are no longer divided. And right there, in that quiet beginning, you step into a new relationship with your life, one where growth is not measured by recognition, but by alignment. The tower reversed does not always collapse in a single moment, and neither did the structures around you when you first began to detach. This is where the unraveling becomes visible, but only to those who are paying attention, because what once looked solid begins to show its cracks. Not loudly, not dramatically, but in subtle shifts. Conversations that feel hollow, connections that feel forced, environments that no longer respond to you the same way. And slowly, something begins to change. You start to realize that what you thought was stable was only sustained by your participation, your energy, your presence, your willingness to remain within it. And now that you have stepped back, it begins to weaken. Like a structure that depended on your support beams, your absence reveals just how fragile it always was. And this is where it turns inward again. Because part of you may feel tempted to step back in, to stabilize what is falling, to fix what is cracking, to hold together what once felt like it mattered. But here is what most miss. Not everything that collapses needs to be saved. Some things are meant to fall, because they were never built to support who you are becoming. And the deeper truth is this: what is unstable around you reflects what was once misaligned within you. But now that misalignment is being removed, and the structures that were built on it cannot remain the same. So instead of a sudden destruction, you are witnessing a quiet dismantling, a slow release, a reversal of something that no longer holds truth. And from that silence, a new awareness rises. You are no longer responsible for maintaining what you have outgrown. You are no longer required to carry what is no longer aligned. You are no longer obligated to keep things intact just because they once worked. This is not abandonment. This is discernment. And as this continues, something powerful begins to stabilize within you. While the outer structures weaken, your inner foundation strengthens. While external connections shift, your internal clarity deepens. While things around you begin to feel uncertain, something within you becomes steady. Like a tower that is no longer collapsing outward, but instead releasing pressure from within you. Begin to understand that this process is not about destruction. It is about correction, a return to truth, a return to alignment, a return to something that does not require effort to hold together. And right at that point, where you stop trying to rebuild what is falling apart, you begin to step fully into something else, something that does not need to be maintained through effort, because it is built on something real. The chariot reversed does not lose direction completely, but it reveals what happens when movement once came from pressure instead of alignment. This is where the illusion of control is exposed, because there was a time when you were moving fast, making decisions quickly, pushing forward even when something inside you felt uncertain. You told yourself it was progress. You told yourself it was necessary. But now, standing in this quieter space, you can see it differently. That movement was not always guided. It was driven by expectations, driven by the need to prove, driven by the desire to maintain momentum even when your inner direction was unclear. And slowly something begins to change. You are no longer rushing. You are no longer forcing outcomes. You are no longer trying to steer your life through sheer will alone. And at first, this can feel uncomfortable, because when the momentum stops, you are left with stillness. And in that stillness, questions arise. Am I falling behind? Am I losing direction? Am I doing enough? But here is what most miss. Slowing down is not losing control. It is regaining clarity. Because when you are no longer being pulled in multiple directions, you can finally see where you are actually meant to go. And this is where it turns inward again. Because true direction does not come from force. It comes from alignment, from understanding what moves you naturally, without resistance, from recognizing what feels right, not because it is easy, but because it is true. And as this awareness deepens, something inside you begins to recalibrate. Your energy stops scattering. Your focus begins to return. Your decisions start to feel grounded, not rushed, like two opposing forces that once pulled you in different directions. Now slowly coming into balance, you begin to move differently, not faster, but clearer. And from that clarity, a new kind of momentum begins to form. One that does not exhaust you, one that does not require constant correction, one that flows because it is aligned. There may still be moments where you feel the urge to speed things up, to force results, to regain that sense of control you once relied on. But this is where your growth is tested, because the moment you return to force, you disconnect from the clarity you have just begun to build. So instead, you allow, you trust, you move when it feels right, and you remain still when it does not. And this creates something rare, a path that is not driven by urgency, but guided by awareness, a direction that is not imposed, but discovered. And right there, in that shift from force to alignment, you begin to understand something that changes everything. You were never meant to control the path. You were meant to align with it. The Five of Cups reversed does not erase loss, but it transforms how you carry it. because this is where the weight you didn't even realize you were holding begins to lift. Not all at once, not dramatically, but in quiet, almost unnoticeable ways. And slowly something begins to change. The memories that once felt heavy start to soften. The moments you replayed in your mind begin to lose their sharp edges. The sense of regret of what could have been, of what should have worked, starts to loosen its grip. Like cups that once spilled and demanded your attention, you begin to turn your gaze away from what is gone and toward what still remains. And this is where it turns inward again. Because healing is not about pretending nothing was lost. It is about recognizing that loss does not define what is still possible. You begin to see that what you left behind, what faded, what ended, was not a failure. It was a transition, a necessary release that made space for what could not exist before. And here is what most miss. As long as your focus remained on what was lost, your energy remained tied to the past. But now, your attention is shifting. And where your attention goes, your life follows. You are no longer standing in the same place emotionally. You are no longer anchored to the same outcomes. You are no longer measuring your life by what didn't happen. Instead, you are beginning to notice what is quietly emerging. A new sense of possibility, a subtle return of hope, a feeling that something is opening, even if you cannot fully see it yet. And from that shift, something powerful begins to stabilize. Your heart becomes lighter, not because everything is perfect, but because you are no longer resisting what has already passed. Your mind becomes clearer, not because you have all the answers, but because you are no longer trapped in the same questions. Your energy becomes available again, not scattered across memories, but present, here, now. And this creates a different kind of movement, one that is not driven by pain, but guided by acceptance. There may still be moments where the past calls to you, where old emotions surface, where you feel the pull to revisit what once was. But this is where your awareness protects you, because now you can feel the difference between remembering and returning, and you choose differently. You allow the memory, but you do not step back into it. You acknowledge the past, but you do not rebuild your life around it. And right there, in that quiet but powerful decision, you reclaim something that was never truly lost. Your ability to move forward without carrying everything behind you. The Page of Swords doesn't stay silent, and neither does this new clarity that begins to cut through everything you once accepted without question. Because this is where your perception transforms, not softly, but precisely. You begin to notice things you once overlooked, patterns in people, inconsistencies in conversations, subtle shifts in tone, intention, and energy. And slowly something begins to change. You are no longer absorbing everything at face value. You are observing. You are discerning. You are seeing beyond what is said into what is meant. And this is where it turns inward again. Because this awareness is not just about others. It is about you. About the ways you once ignored your own intuition. The moments you sensed something was off, but stayed anyway. The times you questioned your truth to maintain connection. But now, that is no longer possible, because once clarity arrives, it cannot be undone. Like a blade catching light, like a ribbon lifting in the wind, revealing what was hidden beneath your mind, becomes sharper, but also calmer, not reactive, not defensive, just aware. And here is what most miss. This level of awareness creates distance, not because you are separating from others intentionally, but because you are no longer engaging in the same unconscious patterns. You do not respond the same way. You do not overlook the same things. You do not tolerate what once felt normal, and because of that, your presence changes. You may speak less, but when you do, your words carry more weight. You may engage less, but when you do, your intention is clear. You are no longer trying to be understood through constant explanation. You are expressing from a place of truth and allowing others to meet you there, or not. And from that shift, something powerful stabilizes. Your mind becomes a tool, not a battlefield. Your thoughts become aligned, not scattered. Your voice becomes intentional, not reactive. There may still be moments where you feel the urge to question yourself, to wonder if you are overthinking, overanalyzing, pulling away too much. But this is where your growth is anchored, because what you are experiencing is not paranoia. It is perception, refined through everything you have walked through. And right there, in that sharpened awareness, you begin to understand something that changes the way you move entirely. You are no longer here to accept everything. You are here to see clearly and choose wisely. And as that realization settles in, your life begins to respond accordingly. And as your life begins to respond to that clarity, you may notice something quiet settling over everything. Not silence in the way you once feared, but stillness in the way you now understand. Because after all the separation, all the fading, all the shifting and releasing, you are no longer searching for yourself in the same way. You are no longer trying to reconstruct who you were. You are no longer asking the world to confirm what you already feel within. Instead, you are standing in something far more subtle, a grounded awareness, a steady presence, a quiet knowing that does not need to be announced to be real. Chosen one. This was never about being forgotten. It was about being freed. Freed from the weight of being held in other people's incomplete perceptions. Freed from maintaining versions of yourself that no longer matched your truth. Freed from needing to be remembered in order to feel real. And now, look at what remains. You. Not the version shaped by expectation. Not the version defined by past connections. But the version that exists, even when no one is watching. Even when no one is remembering. Even when no one is reflecting you back. That is who you were always meant to meet. And yes, there may still be moments where you feel the echo of what once was. Moments where you wonder how you are, seen, or if you are seen at all. But those moments no longer hold the same power, because you have crossed something invisible, but irreversible. You no longer depend on reflection to recognize yourself. And that changes everything. So do not rush this. Do not try to fill the space too quickly. Do not return to what felt familiar, just to avoid the unknown. Because this space, this quiet, this separation, is not emptiness. It is alignment. It is the place where your true identity stabilizes, without distortion. And from here, everything you build will be different, more honest, more grounded, more yours. So keep moving forward, not with urgency, but with trust. Not with force, but with awareness. Not with fear of being forgotten, but with the understanding that you are finally no longer lost. And that is the beginning of everything.